Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey, Tom. I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. Believe everybody has been here before, but my name is Malini Sims, and I'm a principal planner with the town. And tonight I'm joined by Bayer Vella, planning manager, as well as Paul Kiesler, town engineer, to help walk us through the discussion tonight. So we have a lot to discuss tonight, so I'm just going to get right into it. I just have a short presentation, and then we will be using the whiteboard. I do want to let folks know that the purpose of tonight is to go through the goals, policies, and actions. If you're having trouble seeing those on the whiteboard, just be aware that I did put a link in the chat, so you can definitely open them up on your own device. But they are also emailed out to the group last Friday. All right, so just a quick reminder of our purpose for tonight. It really is to walk through those draft goals, policies, and actions. Again, I want to emphasize that the word draft in this instance, they really are the first attempt to um, to capture not only what was heard over the last year, but also what we heard from you all back in February. We will be taking a little bit more time to kind of refresh everyone's minds of the conversations in February tonight. But ultimately, our goal is to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. So at the end of each goal, policy, and action group, I will be asking the group that to see if you accept those, if they are on the right path. And just keep in mind our definition of consensus is that we may not like everything or agree with everything, but we do accept them, that they're headed in the right direction and is what's best for the community. So just a quick reminder of what the goals, policies, and actions aim to do. Goals are kind of our high level. It's what our desired results are. Policies are a bridge between our goals and actions. It gives us the path to fulfilling those. And then those actions are really those specific steps that the town would take to fulfill the goals. Again, the charge for a 10-year plan is that our goals, policies, and actions are prescriptive enough that we are addressing the intent and priorities that residents have voiced, but broad enough that they stay relevant over 10 years. So also keep that in mind during our discussion this evening. And then as always, I want to remind folks of the ground rules. Again, we have a lot to get through tonight. We have 2 meetings worth of information. So just ask that everyone please stay focused on the area at hand and be respectful of each other and each other's time. And then again, our number one charge is to create a plan that honors the resident voices heard over the past year. So what you see on the screen right now is the guiding principle related to transportation. This is really what guided our conversations and discussion questions you guys responded to back in February, but also is what's guiding our discussion tonight. Now, at the end of the meeting, I will be asking the group to and checking in with you guys to make sure it still accurately reflects what was heard and see if there's any changes or refinements to this as well. And again, tonight, I'm going to be using the whiteboard a lot and moving around a bit. So I just want to remind folks that you can adjust your view without affecting anybody else's. You can use the zoom in magnifying glasses to zoom in and out. You can also use the hand to pan around. I do want to caution folks though, when you're using the hand to pan around, just be careful. All the items are locked down, but you can, if you click around too much, you can definitely accidentally delete things or move things around. So I just ask for folks to be careful with that and only use the hand to pan around. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the whiteboard for tonight's discussion. All right, so again, I know it's really busy right now and you can't see anything, but just to kind of let you all know where we're headed for tonight and the meeting, what we're aiming to achieve this meeting is we want to talk about the goals, policies, and actions related to pedestrian and cyclist safety and street design, the street network and traffic flow, road maintenance, and this includes a lot of discussion that you all had regarding public art as well as landscaping. And then we'll head into public transportation. We'll then wrap up our evening, again, talking about that draft guiding principle. So I will be keeping time this evening and pace for the discussion, but do keep in mind we have all 5 areas that we're trying to accomplish tonight with our discussion. As always, we hope that everyone, if you can, please have your videos on and raise your hand to speak. We always like to hear everyone's voice, but if you are more comfortable or if you need to use the chat, that's also available. Ultimately, we just want to make sure that everybody who wants to share their thoughts has an opportunity to do so. All right, so let's get started, and I apologize, I'm going to zoom over to our first area. So we're starting with the orange, which is pedestrian, cyclist, safety, and design. And so again, I know the whiteboard comments are too small to see. These are really just for reference as they are summarized in the table we're going to go through here in a moment. But when we talked about pedestrian and cyclists, there were a good amount of comments about safety, signs and amenities, connectivity, and routes. So I'm going to zoom us down and just looking at the table just to walk everyone through what it's showing. Okay. So in that first column, it really just breaks out what area these comments are related to. So it starts with safety. The second column, community guidance, that's what we heard over the last year. So that is, again, the statistically projectable survey. So it does represent, when we look at 74%, for instance, that's really closer to around 30,000 residents. As you can see, residents definitely prioritize not only pedestrian and cyclist safety, but also having routes and connections. Then in our first meeting, in our meetings in February, when we talked about this, a lot of your conversations surrounded around cleanliness, making sure the multi-use paths, paved shoulders were clean and free of debris. Also, separation from traffic, that was also a lot of the conversation, and making sure that there's enough space for folks to ride or walk and away from vehicles. And then we also talked about e-bikes and how they're growing in popularity, here to stay, but also may need some regulation. And then there are just other general safety comments related to bus stops as well as memorials along roadways. So looking at our actions, policies, and goals, I want to start us off with our A's. So A1 through A8. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more again. All right, try to give folks, oops, an opportunity. I'm sorry, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Apologies. Again, you can zoom in or out more if you need to. But looking at the A's, there we go. Now I think I can zoom in. Nope. Okay. Looking at the A's, A1 through A8, I'll give everyone a moment to read those, as well as please read the working policy and the goal under this. Please read through those. And the questions that we have tonight are, do these accurately reflect what residents said over the last year, what you talked about in your last meeting, or is anything missing, or does anything need to be clarified? All right, so we'll go with Hal and then Randy.
Well, is there a reason we don't have an A3?
A4 either. Or there's A4, sorry.
There is an A4. No, I don't recall if there was a reason for not having A3.
Okay. So it would be should be through A7, it looks like, rather than if you change them.
Yeah, thank you. And I will let everyone know the letters and numbers will continue to evolve as we go through this process. You'll see that there's duplicates in here as well. So right now they're more just so that when you guys are speaking, we know which one you're talking about, but appreciate the comment. How
Okay.
we'll make sure they're clear.
Okay. No big deal. Thanks.
Yeah. And then Randy?
Yes, I had the same comment as Hal, and I was wondering if A2, since it's two items, researching and utilization,
Mhm.
if maybe that could be split in half. One is to research it, and then whatever the research develops, implement that.
Okay. And then Cheryl?
Okay, on A4,
Mhm.
where it's talking about the pavement color and the physical barriers, how would we accomplish this pavement color? Is the color within the paint? Because I recall, I think maybe it was City of Tucson, where they painted stripes and intersections and it wore off very, very quickly. So I was a little bit concerned about getting us into that type of a cost. And physical barriers, I don't really like seeing those, I think Paul calls them candlesticks along the roads, because it looks like we made a mistake and had to do something to to separate. So that's just a personal comment. So I have those two things I wanted to ask about. And down under A8, when we were talking about the memorials, I know that Jody was talking about the one over on Naranja that has the distracting lights associated with it. I'm wondering if we can possibly do anything with that to set some parameters around the size of it and maybe limit it somehow to either like a cross or a ghost bike, if that might be something that would help with distraction. Just a
Okay.
few.
So I will have Paul and maybe Paul Kiesler answer the color question you had. With regard to barriers, I know there were some brought up, and maybe I think Tom, maybe you had some ideas that they don't always have to be the candlesticks or the bumps along the road. Or there, so we try to keep it broad as not specifying the type of barriers. And then I don't see her on the call either tonight, but I know Maureen brought up there's other buffers that she's seen in other places. So it doesn't just mean those candlesticks. So Mr. Kiesler, do you want to talk about the pavement color?
Well, we use traffic rated paint, so I'm not familiar with the problems down in the city of Tucson with this, but we don't have problems with ours. It's a traffic rated paint, and then we put glass beads in it afterwards for reflectivity. Now, we do go out and monitor we have a reflectivity meter in which we measure the paint and its lifespan, and it's a constant maintenance thing in Arizona that you have to replace the paint.
Thanks, Paul. And I do want to mention that all the items listed under bullet point 2, rightfully so, I think somebody else mentioned, it's a list of options, if you will. It's just making sure that they're delineated. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be that all would be in place by any means.
And the candlesticks, they're used because we need to create a barrier, but that barrier needs to be a soft barrier so that it doesn't become a traffic hazard. And that's why candlesticks is probably the most universally used for that particular purpose.
And then I would like to actually phrase your last point to the group in terms of the memorials. So we do have an A8 about ensuring that they're safe. But as a group, if you could raise your hand if you want to discuss more on I guess, the comment about lights and size of memorials or limiting those to specific types. Jody, and then Andrew.
Hi, good evening. So yeah, it's a concern because it becomes a deterrent to people. They're not watching the road. They're seeing what has been added to the site on a daily basis. Sometimes I'm just frustrated because in the sign code, we have a million rules of signage and what you can put on a sign and what you can tie to a sign and what can be a banner and what can be a balloon or a Mylar or a shiny object. Yet when it comes to the memorials, it says they're exempt from all the rules. So we've got a 7-foot cross that lights up at night on the side of the road with 400 dead flowers and stuffed bears and soccer balls. And I want to memorialize things. I get it. And I think we need something, but I think there needs to be some kind of rules attached to memorials. And we need to figure out what those rules would look like. If it's a beautiful sign, a plaque, you know, what is it that the town of Oro Valley can do to regulate? It all gets placed there, but it never gets thrown away when it gets old and dirty and dead. And there's all these components. They're allowed to put all this stuff out, but nobody ever cleans it up. So it gets worse and worse and worse. It blows into the street. So that's my challenge, is I want them to be able to memorialize things, but I think we need some regulations. We need a code.
Okay, so question for the group. I hear you. So what if A8, you know, it does talk about making sure that they're positioned for safety, but also what if we somehow, you know, add considering design as well for safety? We don't want to specify too much in the 10-year plan of, like, you know, what types they can have and lighting standards, things like that in the 10-year plan. That wouldn't be the appropriate place, but we could definitely look at rewarding A8 to be a little bit more, to touch on a little bit more of everyone's concerns.
Well, is there a way that we can adopt a code to put within the sign code for memorials? Like we have a committee and we say, okay, it's going to be a memorial plaque, or it can't be bigger than a 1 by 2 foot, or, you know, what's that process look like? Can we just say we want to develop in the plan, we want to develop a code for memorials?
Well, let me get some more other ideas and we can definitely look into that. We could also, as McKenna worded it much better than I did, of designed and positioned safely, which would spur from that action of looking at those parameters.
Yeah, and then I understand somebody has to monitor it, somebody has to check it, and somebody has to fix it, and I get it.
Yeah. All right. So I think appreciate it though, Jody. And yeah, we'll definitely look at the wording for that. But let's go to Andrew, who's had his hand up, then Gail and Tony.
Just 2 points.
Yep.
For the memorials. Would it be possible to adopt the same kind of a signage we have for Adopt a Highway? That the family could make a donation and then it's all uniform, it's permanent, there's no illumination, there's no debris, and it's done. Just a possibility. And the second question was, I believe a gentleman made a comment that we should embrace the concept as streets are repaved and so forth. If there are not bike lanes, that we should install them. Is this an appropriate venue for that comment?
Sure. Yep. And I do believe we have an action related to that we will get to here soon. So I'll check back in with you.
Okay,
Nope, you're
sorry.
good. Make sure we get that.
Because as we go through the township, if we keep adding bike lanes, then they get maintained and we're being cognizant of the cyclists in our community.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, Gail, Tony, then Tom.
Okay, I was just curious, why are the memorials exempt? I mean, how did that come about? Does anyone know how they became exempt? No, I mean, it's just been our practice.
I'll see if Mr. Bella has his hand up. He probably knows the history on that.
Yeah, I'd be glad to share. For one, there's never been a memorial including the one today, that has a demonstrable safety issue. There's a perception, I get it, and I hear you, of a safety issue. But in terms of speeds and actual stats and what, there's never been, nor is there today, a demonstrable safety issue. And that's, some folks may not want to hear that, but that's a fact. Memorials, we've never, ever received a complaint till after this horrible accident and that memorial. And quite frankly, just going to speak straight to folks, there is a concern about sitting down with a grieving family and telling them what they can and can't do when there's no demonstrable safety issue. So, so I'd ask the group to consider treading lightly on this. And if you wish, I think, having wording like what Ms. Sims mentioned, emphasizing safety and incorporating design guidelines and standards, having that language in there ensures that the town will work on that as a project and as a consideration. But I do ask the group to really also take that other part in consideration. But we hear you. If that's what you want in there, that's what's going to be in there. But by putting those words in, it's ensuring it'll get done. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, but because that kind of makes me maybe think things a little bit differently.
Sure.
It sounds to me maybe more of its personal preference for eyesore, that kind of looks more like an eyesore.
Yeah, I get it.
More so than that, because even if we develop policies, someone's going to have to sit down with the grieving family and say, I'm sorry, you're not conforming to the policy.
Right.
So no matter what it is, it's still going to be challenging. So.
Well, I can jump in on that one. We've had to do that.
Okay.
And we already have policies.
Okay.
So the policies are based on safety. And as Mr. Vella stated, when we received the complaints on the current one on Naranja, we went and looked at it, and it's been up for a while now. There have been no incidents whatsoever. PD has not had to deal with one accident out there. So there isn't as Mr. Vella said, a demonstrable example of where this has created a safety issue. I mean, one could say that almost the same thing about public art along the side of the road. It creates a distraction and people look at it. But back to your point, we have actually the one over on Shannon. So there's one over on Shannon just south of Naranja. And when we widened, the developer widened for the subdivision that went in, I had to personally go talk to that family and let them know that by widening and making it safer in that area to add that third turn lane, they needed to move their memorial back a few feet. And quite honestly, that was an easy conversation because they were all about their grieving family. They don't want to see other grieving families, and talking about a safety issue was an easy conversation. Now, we didn't tell them what they could and could not have out there. That's a personal preference. And these people are celebrating the lives of those that are gone. And that's where the town really doesn't get into that. And I think that's probably the genesis behind not having a zoning code issue for the content. But certainly we have code issues with regard to site visibility triangles. And I just want to make sure that this group clearly understood that if there is a safety issue caused by lack of sight, or elements could fall into the roadway, if there's things of that nature, we do work with the families, because again, the last thing that they want to do is see another accident caused because of a memorial they have.
And
just as a follow-up a little bit too on this, so what I'm hearing, there doesn't appear to be any current safety stuff. Have we benchmarked any other communities? Do any other communities have what do they do? I mean, we may not have to reinvent the wheel. I don't know. I'm just asking if we've looked what other communities do, because what I'm hearing is that, yeah, it's kind of an eyesore to those of us who maybe haven't lost a loved one, but I kind of get the grieving family and they want it. And I think we just clearly define it has to be safe. I don't know if we need to get into what it looks like and how it looks like and how long it can be up there. Unfortunately, maybe that's something we just have to deal with. I mean, if it gets unsightly, I'm asking the people in the town, if it gets unsightly, what do you guys do? Is there anything, have you guys ever cleaned anything up? Or, I don't know.
Yeah, so my staff is in charge of road maintenance, and we street sweep, of course. We go through and we do periodic sweeping. So if there is flower debris or something like that, chances are it's blown off by the wind long before we get to it. It's not been an issue for us, at least from a road maintenance standpoint. And again, from debris falling out into the road that becomes a hazard, it's never been an issue that we've had to deal with, because again, this is such a large issue for the town, particularly again, dealing with the grieving family, that I would certainly know about. It would come to my attention, and my nearly 20 years here, that has never been an issue. The only issue.
It sounds to me like we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. Oh,
Sorry, that's all I have to
say the
say.
same. I would say the
That's all I have
same.
to say. Thank you.
No, appreciate it.
No, I'm gonna step in because you've stepped on. And I feel like I should respond. It's definitely an issue. I've reported 2 near misses at that corner. And I know you put out speed strips to see how fast people are going and if they're slowing down, but I don't want another accident. I don't want somebody running into the back of me. I've had squealing brakes behind me, and I've had a swerve around me real fast at the end because they're busy looking at all of this stuff versus the car in front of them that has their blinker on to turn and slowing down and almost running into them. So I've reported it a couple of times. I've tried to work with the town. It is an issue. It's also in somebody's front yard. And is that fair for that person to have to look at that every single day from here forward? I don't understand the reasoning. I get it. I feel bad. I do. But there's got to be a limitation. It's growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We just need some limits, just some limits.
So I think we'll definitely, just to kind of wrap us up on this conversation, is for A8, we'll definitely look at the wording and see if we can get some more about the design on it. So, because right now, the wording definitely talks about positioning it safely, but we can also look at design. And that, again, as Mr. Vela said, gives staff the direction to look more into this. Let's go to Tony, then Tom. Oh, and Tony, you're muted. There you go.
Okay. No, did I do that? Okay. I don't want to be the grievance Grinch, but I think there is a need for some uniformity, a design or a plaque that anybody would recognize driving by without knowing names, that this is celebrating the life of someone. So I agree with Jody that there needs to be some guidance for putting these up. And my preference would be some sign or symbol that anybody would recognize as part of a family grieving the loss of a person. That's it.
Yep. Thank you, Tony. And then Tom?
Yeah, I actually had the same comment that Gail had. I thought, I was just curious if the state had anything to say about this, or other municipalities that we could take a lead from rather than try to reinvent the wheel.
Okay. Mr. Keesler, I don't know if you know if there's state requirements.
Well, the state requirements would not be applicable for us except for Oracle Road. But
No, I understand that, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the state mandates what we do. I'm just saying that that could give you some guidance as to what would be reasonable.
Sure. And we can definitely, I say, yeah, we can, as we're, again, looking at AA and the marching orders, if you will, from A8 would be to look into it. So that would be definitely an option to look at what other jurisdictions do in the state as well.
Yeah, we can certainly benchmark other communities. That's not an issue whatsoever.
All right. So just wanted, before I move us down though, are there other comments about A1 through A7? Right, Randy?
I just have a question about e-bikes.
Sure.
E-bikes are basically electrical assisted bicycles. Different than motorcycles or scooters. And I was wondering why we need something specific. What are the issues there that we're thinking about? Is it speed? Is there something else that I'm not aware of? But I don't understand the focus, I guess is my question.
So from last time, I know we did hear about safety issues due to the weight and speed of them. But I think this was brought up by maybe Hal and others. So Tom and then Sue, and then Hal, definitely please let us know if you have anything to add.
Not on that subject. I was going to comment on signage on the multi-use path. There's some confusion. Normally they tell you if you're running on the road, you should run against traffic. And on the multi-use path, there's some confusion by people who are walking on the path versus bicycles. Bicycles go in the direction of traffic, but pedestrians and runners seem to go every which way. There's no signage that I'm aware of to direct, for example, runners to run against traffic, if you will. I think that would be useful.
Okay. And then Sue, and then Hal.
Yes, I do think we really need to have some kind of signage or rules or something about the e-bikes, because they are very heavy and they will create a lot more problems than they have now, because there's going to be a lot more. And people don't know, can they ride them on the or not? They don't know. I'm just saying it's something that needs to have more signage or something. And as a person who's been run over twice, not necessarily by those bikes, but bikes, I can tell you we really need to be concerned with the safety. Like I said, I don't ride my bike on there anymore because of it. And I just think I think we need to look at the safety. I think it's important. E-bikes and regular bikes.
Okay, thank you. And Hal?
Yeah, regarding e-bikes, it's I'm not an expert, but my understanding is there's like 3 classifications of e-bikes, starting with a small motor that just barely assists while you're pedaling, and then there are those up to the other extreme where the motor basically does everything for you, and you could go at a fairly high rate of speed, and the more assistance involved, usually the heavier the bike, the heavier the battery. So maybe not all e-bikes would be a problem, but I think there are some, especially the ones that provide more assistance, that could be a real danger.
Yeah. Appreciate the context, Hal. And the way the action is written is broad, but that's also because in 10 years, who knows? We could all be flying by then, who knows? So Randy, does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. And then, sorry, Paul, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to let everybody know that we're actually actively looking into this. And as Malini said, we need to make this broad because right now it's e-bikes, but who knows what it's going to be in the future. We do have a moratorium of riding electric vehicles on the path. But this is a good subject for the plan that opens that doorway as something else comes along.
Great, thank you. Oh, and Mr. Bella?
Yes, I wanted to let everyone know that there is a trails plan, master plan that we're working on now. And if you're really interested in this topic of e-bikes, and Tom, you mentioned the wayfinding signage, we're doing a deep dive on all these projects, all these topics as part of the master trails and paths plan. So would love to get you guys on board to take this further. And so happy to share the next meeting date and send it out to the group if you guys want to take an even deeper dive on this, because we're going to get real specific about this. So thanks.
Great, thank you. So is everyone okay with us moving down to the Bs? Okay. So the next area, whoops, sorry, zoom out a little bit, excuse me, was related to connectivity. And so with connectivity, we talked about education and designated areas, multi-use paths, having them connect to even the loop. We also talked about crossing along Oracle Road, as well as connections to parks and shops. So I am going to move us over, and again, apologize for all the zooming in and out, but trying to get a good view for folks to be able to see. All right, so we're going to focus on the Bs all the way, B1, B2 through C1 to C6. I think that's about all I can fit on the page. So anybody have comments about B1, B2, or even the policy B? Hal?
Well, my comment was actually on C2, so I
Oh,
don't know if
that
you want
works.
to wait on that or should I go ahead?
Go for it. Yep.
Okay, so as Byard just mentioned, there is an ongoing process regarding it's Trails Connect, is that what it is? Regarding the trails in the town. And C2 references create an active transportation plan. So what's the relationship between the trails planning effort and what C2 says?
So for the trails, it's definitely about unpaved trails, multi-use paths, the loop, things like that, which is part of the multi-use path system, where this could also include sidewalks and other routes of that nature, mostly sidewalks, but
So
it could be a little bit more comprehensive.
C2 would be a broader scope. I would suppose it could
Yes.
integrate the trails planning effort
Absolutely.
ongoing.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I will add that note on here too, integrate trails. And then McKenna?
Yeah, I just, as like kind of a funny note and also as a thank you to you and your team, I have been having like nightmare worries about every so often, every time I've driven past that like Northern and McGee intersection, I keep seeing people walking there and being like, we didn't talk about that enough. We definitely should have talked about it more. So seeing that in there, I was like, oh great, I can stop worrying about this. Like it just was like great sigh of relief. So thank you to you and your team. This was wonderful to see, and I'm really ecstatic with how hard you guys have worked and how comprehensive it is. So thumbs up to you guys, and thank you for easing my troubled mind.
Well, thank you, McKenna, but this is definitely a reflection of all of your work. So I want to thank you all for showing up to the meetings, or this wouldn't be what it is. Okay. Other comments on B1 through C6? And Jody had a question, who would dictate the loop rules for e-bikes?
Well, ultimately, I can jump in on that. Ultimately, that would be the town council, because any regulatory, anything regulatory, from speed limits to no parking, ultimately that needs to go through the town council for approval. What we do have is an internal traffic safety committee in which we discuss all of these subjects. And then we bring those forward to the town council as appropriate. Or sometimes the town council asks us a question to look into. We research it and then we bring it back to them.
I guess the real question is do we dictate the loop within Oro Valley, or is the loop part of a bigger infrastructure? I mean, if I'm on the loop and I'm on my e-bike, I don't have an e-bike. If I'm on my e-bike and I'm riding through Tucson and then I'm riding through Pima County and now I hit Oro Valley and I can't be on it anymore. How am I going to get to where I need to go? That's why I was wondering.
Well, what I can offer is that whatever we do, we're going to do in concert with everybody else.
Okay.
So if we find that there is a particular issue, let's just say e-bikes. In Oro Valley, our citizens have spoken strongly that e-bikes are a real problem and they have no place on the path. This is hypothetical, of course.
Right.
That they have no place on the loop system. Then what we would do is we would coordinate that with the other jurisdictions that are part of the loop system. What we don't want to have is disparate rules. You come to a
Right.
border and next thing you know, you can't do it. So there's that level that we would always explore, no matter what we would do.
Yeah.
That was my concern. Thank you.
No, that's a really good point, Jody. And that would be part of, we would definitely need to do that research as part of creating those regulations. Very good point. Okay, so are we good to keep going? All right, so I'm going to move us down a little bit. These are still connectivity, but we're now focused on C7, C8, and D1. So C7 and 8 are focused on connectivity to schools, and we especially kids walking to school. And D1 is looking at those gaps that may not be in Oro Valley. So there was a lot of conversation about, I know, the area around Thornydale. So working with our surrounding jurisdictions to fill in the gaps and make sure we have a regional system. So any comments on C7, C8, or D1? Cheryl?
So I just have a question regarding C8 and the last bullet, station the police officers near the schools. I know Painted Sky has crossing guards. I'm not really sure about the other ones, but I'm just wondering if that's the best use of our police officers, other than maybe if they have the SRO come out.
Okay, so maybe clarify that. That it could be the SROs or even, you said there's crossing.
There are crossing guards, yes, at Painted Sky. And they have the cones there.
But they're not commissioned officers, those crossing guards.
They're not.
No, yeah.
But there are everywhere there is a school zone, there's generally a crossing guard, particularly for the rollout signs. They have to roll them out and then they roll them back in.
And I think these
Yes.
ones, some of the conversation was around some of the charters and private schools that don't have, sometimes don't have, like Lehman was brought up, I think, because one of them, where they don't have the school zones.
Okay.
Lehman has one now.
Yeah.
Brand new.
Thank you, Paul.
We just built it.
And then Tony, I think you were. Oops.
Okay, on C7, I'm a former educator with almost 40 years of experience. This at C7, that's a cultural phenomenon that over the years, more and more parents are driving their kids to school, even if they're within walking distance. My staff and I were rather uncomplimentary. We call them the hover mothers that don't trust that their children can walk to school. It's not that it's not available to them. There's sidewalks. Kids have bicycles, but this is maybe in the last 15 years of my teaching really became a problem with parents driving their kids to school when there was really no physical reason for it. I just wanted to say something because I think that's a hard one to crack.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, it may not make a huge dent in the amount of kids walking, but maybe there's a way to at least help answer parents' questions or, reduce some of the
I
concerns.
think it's more of a safety issue.
Sure.
Like their kids will be kidnapped or totally out of proportion to the realities of life.
We'll appreciate you sharing your experience. It is helpful. All right, I'm going to keep chugging us along then. But of course, feel free to chime in if you want to, if I pass anything that you wanted to talk about. So our next area was focused on signs and amenities. So looking and also promotion of our great hiking and walking opportunities. So under signs and amenities, there was discussion about having more seating, drinking fountains, etc., where appropriate along different multi-use paths, bike routes, and trails. There's also the safety issue and etiquette of getting more of that information out, especially to through signage, which Tom, you mentioned earlier, as well as getting information out to shops, resorts, and hotels for visitors, and then also increasing awareness of those items, specifically at intersections. And then, as you guys mentioned earlier as well, is adding directional signage so people know when they're on the loop or on a trail or something like that, they know where to get off to go to a store, a park, wherever whatever options are around them. And then the last ones, they're kind of a jumble, F1, B1, and F2. They focus on ways to promote Oro Valley as a bike-friendly community. So if you have questions, comments, or think anything needs to be added or clarified, we're at E1, B2, A4, C6, F1, B1, and F2. That's a really bad bingo card, but hopefully you're all able to follow along. Hal?
Yeah, regarding E1, I think the language there is pretty good, but given how hot it can get here, I'd like to see specific mention there of shade structures, as well as seating, drinking fountains, etc.
Okay. And Cheryl?
In the A4 area where we're talking about signage, the loop does have, or maybe it's C6, the loop has signage at different areas where it'll say 1 mile to La Cañada or 1 mile to something, so that you can kind of figure out how much further you have to go. And if we could just maybe do a continuation of that on the section of the loop that's ours, that would probably be great. And maybe they could give us a deal on pricing for the signage and go through the same company.
Very good point. Thank you. And I think we would, any signage on the loop, we'd want to be consistent with what's going on in the region, most likely. And then Mr. Kiesler?
Yeah, I want to discuss something that was brought up earlier that I think warrants some technical guidance for this group. Of course, you guys will make up your own mind how you want to handle this. But it's the terminology of bike lanes. So within the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, that's the Bible that is used across the nation as far as control of traffic. It includes signage, lights, all that fun stuff. Currently, the way the MUTCD is written, and this has been the way it has been written for many, many years, is that bike lanes are specifically for bicyclists. So as your town engineer, I do oppose, because we have very limited resources, taking the multi-use, the shoulders, and turning them into bike lanes. It's better that they are multi-use lanes because it can be used for everything from a car pulling over to make a cell phone call, to runners, to other forms, even skateboarders or razors. You know, what, again, new technology, new fads, it allows for those things. Heck, I saw one guy on a, it looked like one of those CrossFit machines, you know, the elliptical machines, but the bottom half was like a bicycle. So he's going down the road like that. Another time I saw somebody on skis and there was wheels underneath the skis and they were doing cross-country skiing on that paved shoulder. So I don't want to limit that paved shoulder, and that would be something that I would resist as well, particularly the way the MUTCD is written. Now, if the MUTCD was ever modified, that we could utilize the terminology bike lanes, but bike lanes was a uniform descriptor that allowed all these multiple pedestrian and stopped vehicle uses, well, then I would be supportive of using that. But I just wanted to bring that point out as to why Oro Valley doesn't currently do that. And it's because of the regulations, and where these regulations become important is honestly, it's during the lawsuits.
Thank you, Paul. And I think folks, if everybody's okay with it, we'll definitely update that to saying paved shoulders and with some parentheses. So everybody knows what we're talking about, but using the correct terminology. Appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to zoom us out again. Again, I apologize if I'm making people dizzy. But before we move on to talk about the street network and traffic flow, just by a head nod or a thumbs up, does everybody accept these as heading in the right direction? Knowing we are going to revise them to definitely better clarify the memorial information and then adding some of the comments that you guys had tonight. All right. Gail? Oh, all right.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. I'm thumbs up.
All right. Thanks, Gail. All right. I'm going to move us on to the next topic area, which is our yellow, if you're following along. And even if you're following along with the sheet that was emailed out or linked, it is the yellow columns we're focused on now. They're about the OV street network, including traffic flow, and that also is intersection design as well as stoplight timing. So our first area is intersection design and stoplight timing. Then we'll talk about Oracle Road. We had a lot of great conversation about that specifically, and then we'll go to other roadways. And again, what we heard from the community last year through the survey is traffic was a concern and there is a need for better traffic light timing. We're starting at the very top, focusing on intersection design and just general comments. You guys did talk about the use of roundabouts when they might be good to help traffic flow and when they may not work. Also, some comments just about the general timing of lights, specifically along Tangerine, La Cañada, and La Cholla, and then making sure that we are maintaining an adequate level of service along roads and intersections. That came up a bit, and then the cost. And then here, Andrew, is where we'll get into making sure that pedestrian and cyclist connectivity is on all new roadway improvement projects. So with that, I'm going to kind of scroll us over, and if we can start with G1 through G3, as well as C1. There's also the policy, and you'll see here, you'll start seeing the word duplicate. That's because this goal is the same goal as the other chart. So give everyone a moment. Randy?
On G3,
Mhm.
superior level of service along roads. How would we define superior level? And where does cost come into achieving superiority? Just seems hard to define.
I think I could take a stab at that. And that is that there is a quantifiable rating standard, and what it's based on in intersections is really timing. How long are you delayed in an intersection? So it's rated on a scale, and that scale is generally A through F. And universally an industry standard is you want to have your timing as a D or better. Now, I know a lot of people equate this towards like school grades. It doesn't really work that way. And A doesn't mean that you're A-okay and that's the best thing to do. Because quite honestly, sometimes for safety's sakes, you have to diminish the intersection timing. So I can speak to red light running. We have now implemented on all of our intersections a 3-second delay between green to red because of red light running. And we have had a fatality because of red light running. And what that does is when you add up all the different cycles, that could diminish a whole letter grade, but it's not a grade in the like I said, in the conventional sense. You got to balance the usefulness for people to get through versus the safety. And I think this goes to, we want to have the best functionality we can, which means we want to study, we want to optimize, and we want to have, again, the functionality for the convenience for the user and the safety for everyone as well. So I wholeheartedly support that this is a policy that directs staff to continually analyze our intersections and move forward. So I thank the group for that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesler. Cheryl?
So Paul, back in the 2005 general plan, there were 2 specific bullet points that spoke to level of service. Let's see here. Strive to maintain at least a level of service D on all streets within Oro Valley was 1, and schedule roadway improvements to avoid LOSE without creating excess roadway capacity. So would that be a problem? Because the reason I like that is that when new developments are under consideration, it really focuses in and makes it a little bit easier for people to understand whether the road conditions at those intersections are going to have a problem. And I don't think, sometimes I think that's a bit overlooked. So is that something that you would object to?
Well, Cheryl, thank you for the comment. I don't think I would object to it. I think I take difference with the statement that it's overlooked, that we analyze it and we bring forward, if there's a major change in an intersection due to a development, we highlight that to the council as to exactly what that change would be. Ultimately the council is going to weigh the pros and cons of something. And what I want us to get away from is that concept that these are letter grades. An A is better than a B, which is better than a C. Now, granted, in some cases that could be the case, like when it's a unsignalized intersection, you want to have the highest rating as possible, because just speaking frankly, if people wait too long, some people will do dumb things. And accidents are a matter of statistics. So when enough people do enough dumb things, accidents happen. Now, on a signalized intersection, that's a bit different. On a signalized intersection, you have a lot more safety variability here, that even when you get less service, and I'll use Oracle Road, Oracle and McGee, level of F will always be a level of F. And there will be no way to change that, because certain times of the day, that intersection takes 2 to 3 lights to get through, but it gets through safely. When you look at the amount of cars that go through there, as opposed to the number of accidents and the number of serious accidents, Oro Valley still has a relatively safe intersection there. Now, I'm not saying it can't be improved with some timing on the safety side, but that would probably be to the detriment of timing to get through. I don't have a huge problem with the language of the 2005 plan, but sometimes, because the way it's written, and the way it's written to strive to. Okay?
Mhm.
We can always strive to, but it's my job to bring forward to council if an intersection's an A right now and a new development's coming in and that new development's gonna make it into a D. Sure, that might be you know, above that threshold, that acceptable threshold, but it's still my job to let the council know. And there might not be an answer. The answer might be that the development is too intensive. And particularly if it's subject to the council's discretion, like a rezoning or something like that, well, then it's incumbent that they know that. And so we will always bring that forward.
Let me ask the group this, so, and even for you, Paul. So right now it's strive and it's also where possible, to your point, because it's not possible everywhere. So Bayer actually put in the chat, what if it's strive to maintain a superior level of service and no lower than a D?
Well,
Where
that I would have a problem with, because sometimes, again, sometimes you have to balance safety versus convenience. And I will at least during my tenure, I will always pick safety over convenience, 100% of the time.
Thank you. Any other
So-
thoughts about, oh, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, Melanie. A suggestion, no lower, superior, but no lower than D, unless there are overriding safety considerations. Just trying to find a way to weave this to meet all of these suggestions. It's just a thought for discussion.
But for anybody, thoughts on that, of changing the language to lower than a D, but in consideration of safety, making sure that's the top priority. Sue?
There you go. I think we should leave it the way it is. I think it was explained why that it's the way it is, and I think it's sufficient. That's my opinion. Thank you.
And then Randy? Oh, nope, sorry.
That's all right. I just think, you know, having worked on action plans like this before, and you put superior in, unless you have some guidance. So if it's superior based on safety and efficiency, or there's a couple of components that go into it to capture Paul's comments. Just down the road, I think, to communicate to other people what superior means, it might be helpful to put that in. So I appreciate your comments, Paul. And I think that including them in that statement would be really helpful.
Okay. So would that help this one out? To Randy's point, superior can be interpreted many ways and may not be clear. So if we have some more context to that word to help better define it, so everybody knows what we're striving for.
I'm good with that.
Good with, okay. Okay. All right, I'm going to move this down a little bit. So these comments are focused on intersections and specifically ones on Oracle Road or Oracle Road in general. So on C3, it's about working with the state to improve traffic flow and safety, looking at stoplights. That was brought up a lot last time, but then also enhancing landscaping. G4 is focused on key intersections that you all brought up last time. And then G2 and G5 is also about stoplight timing and with regard to all roadways. So it was brought up not just for Oracle. And then G5, I know there was a lot of conversation last time of, you know, it's hard to know what transportation and roadway networks we need without knowing the land use and growth that may happen and development. And so that's where G5 does talk about making sure that we're continually, we have a long-range plan to make sure our roadway network is sufficient for our development in Oro Valley. So again, we're on C3, G4, G2, and G5. If you want to take a moment to read through those. Looks like most people are done reading those, so I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to keep us moving forward. Oh, Cheryl, sorry.
I just have one quick comment, and Paul, I so appreciate, I know I told you this before, but the group hasn't heard it, about the timing of the lights going down La Cañada. I don't know if anybody else rides through there, but I do frequently, and I can tell you that the change you made with the resting green has helped significantly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks for the feedback, Cheryl. Okay, so and then these were other roadways. We did talk about Rancho Vistoso and First and Oracle. And it also is it's a duplicate though of the ones we already saw, these two. So assuming there's no comments again, but I'll give you a moment to look through them again. I do want to also mention there is a legal requirement for our roadways. So excuse me as I scroll over. And that is looking at making sure that we have our street systems and circulation routes mapped out, but also a plan in place for those. So G5 does twofold in terms of the work. It is that long-range plan, making sure we're meeting that policy for state law requirements, but then also, again, meeting what you guys had told us as well. Andrew. Oh, and Andrew, you're muted. Hold on one moment. There you go.
They made the improvement on La Cañada. Was that timing also tried on La Cholla?
Mr. Keesler.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we have resting on La Cholla or not. I haven't heard that La Cholla's been a huge issue one way or the other because I've noticed that I get through La Cholla pretty efficiently, but that's mostly because the volume is so low.
Yeah, it seems that you always wind up hitting the light at Lambert and then Overton, regardless of if you're going 45, 50, 52, 42. It doesn't seem there's any way to continually move through that. And I was just wondering if that timing might in any way affect that or not.
We could look at that.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to my staff about that, but we can look at that one. Now, Overton is a county light. That's not ours.
Okay.
And unfortunately, right now, and maybe this is something you guys want to consider for the policies here, there isn't a cross over from jurisdiction to jurisdiction as far as light timing goes. So ours are on our own network, and particularly the newer lights we have are connected together. There's some lights that aren't connected together, but on newer roads where we have. But they're jurisdiction to jurisdiction, that's a rarity that you have those lights synced together. Hardy and La Cañada, same thing. That's a
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we definitely have the working with, ADA about light timing on Oracle. Is that something the group would like to also add, is working with surrounding jurisdictions for stoplight timing from our major roads to theirs. Thumbs up. Okay, let me get that added.
And I am writing a note to self to look into that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, so before we move on, are there any more comments about traffic, street network and traffic flow, or does everybody accept these as headed in the right direction? We'll make those adds and work on the word superior. Okay. Gonna move us over. We have roadway maintenance, art and landscape. So a lot of this discussion, just to remind folks, was definitely focused on our roads being well maintained, but concerns about funding and future funding opportunities. That was the bulk of the conversation, but we also did talk about partnerships, especially with folks like ADOT to make sure that even if somebody else owns the road in Oro Valley, they're maintained. And then we did talk about how the town can help HOAs maintain their roads, and not financially help, but any other type of ways we can help. So for this one, start us at the top. Just one moment. Okay. So looking at maintaining superior roads and funding, again, there was concern about that, but landscaping, there was a lot of good comments about using native trees, having trees that provide shade, but also low water use trees. And then a lot of our conversation, again, was centered around public art, making sure that it's there, it's not a distraction, but also making sure that it is prioritized. So let's start with H1, H2, and the eyes. So I'll give everyone a moment to read through those, and then Hal, if you want to kick us off.
Okay, H2 seems to be a very broad statement for a working action. I'm almost wondering if it even belongs here. It might be more appropriate in terms of town budgeting or finance or whatever, but I'm not sure this really is appropriate in this context.
Sure. So, and you bring up a good point. So some of these actions, there is crossover between groups. So for instance, you guys in your group talked about, streets being a high priority. And we did hear from folks last year, this was the top priority for roadways, it was 91% prioritized proactive maintenance. So, but to your point, Hal, so we did hear then from other groups of what other core services need to always be a priority for funding. So that's just some background of how this came together. So it does touch on multiple working groups.
Yeah, it goes well beyond transportation facilities. So I'm just not sure this is the place to put it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then Andrew. Oh, sorry, Andrew, I think you're muted.
My question is just a question that on Tangerine, east of La Cañada, all the way to First, I think I have a memory of east of Rancho, it was actually milled down Tangerine. And if that is any plan to resurface that, and also when is the schedule from La Cañada on Tangerine to First for that to be redone?
Yeah, so if I may, Andrew, I'd be happy to connect you with maybe Paul, aside from this meeting, to focus on current roadway improvements.
Fine, thank
That's
you.
okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know if I had a chance to share this at the last meeting, but the Pima Association of Governments, or PAG, They went ahead and rated all the arterials and collectors regionally. And Oro Valley came out on top as far as condition of roadway. I thought a fun little factoid for this group.
Thanks, Paul. All right, I'm gonna move us down. So looking at the other comments about this one was looking at partnerships, and again, working with jurisdictions to maintain their roads if they're in Oro Valley, but even near Oro Valley, and then looking at private roads, how we can help HOAs in their efforts to maintain their roads. So this is J1 and J2. Give everyone a moment to read through these. And especially those of you who are, I know there's several of you who are on HOA boards. I'd love to hear from you if you think this would if these kind of would help benefit your efforts. All right, Gail?
In comment on J2, I do think it would be helpful if the town could help host these workshops for HOAs and things like that, because I know roads is typically the most expensive line item in the budget. And as we noted before, a lot of our roads are substandard because they're private roads, and the type of maintenance they need is different potentially, and there's different technology out. And I know that the company that Oro Valley uses is the company we recently used in our association. And we were able to get kind of a deal because we coordinated our small job, which is most HOA roads are small jobs for these companies, coordinated with other work they have in the area. So I do think that that's all very, very helpful. And again, our community did it on their own, but if you could help facilitate, I think that would be a big help, because again, it's like the #1 line item, almost everyone's budget in the HOA.
Appreciate the feedback, Gail. Any other comments on J1 or J2? Cheryl?
I just have a question on J1 and the feasibility of contacting these other jurisdictions and telling them that you need to fix your road when they probably have a plan just like we do. Is that, Paul probably works with them all the time, but how would they react to that?
Well, and that's one reason to your point, we can't tell them what to do, right? So that's why we put encourage, maybe strongly encourage, but that was the purpose for that wording. But Paul, I don't know if you want to add anything, but
Yeah,
you're
I
right,
want
we can't force anybody to do it.
No, I wanna, we only have one jurisdiction, well, two jurisdictions that we work with that are immediately adjacent to the town. One's the state with Oracle Road, and the other is Pima County. We're surrounded by Pima County. And I want to say that we do coordinate well with them. And there's some intersections that are partially Oro Valley, partially Pima County that we work with to try to do improvements. So no, we have open conversations with them from the very top on down. I've sat with county supervisors and the county administrator in meetings talking about the coordination with Oro Valley. So that goes on. I think it's a very appropriate thing to be added to this plan, because it strives to emphasize that importance of keeping that communication open. So I support it 100%.
Thank you, Paul. All right, not seeing any other hands up. Any other comments in general about roadway maintenance, or are we good to go to the next one? Everybody accept that these are headed in the right direction? Okay. So our last big column is public transportation. So we definitely spent some time talking about different types, specifically dial-a-ride, the park and ride options, but then even types that maybe aren't even in Oro Valley, but maybe in the future, in the next 10 years. And then we spent most of the time though talking about bus buses and feasibility in Oro Valley, as well as having amenities and routes. So again, I'm going to scroll us down. This is now our green column for those of you using your own sheets. So what we heard from the community last year was there's 48% prioritize increasing public transportation option. And then we asked your help, we needed your help to help define what is public transportation and what works in Oro Valley or what fits in Oro Valley. From your guidance, we did hear a lot of comments about dial ride and not only continuing it, but expanding it if possible. Also, looking at the most frequent routes. We talked about park and ride and also, again, maybe expanding it, but also increasing visibility and knowledge and awareness of those. And then we did talk about rail and air or just more modern or new types of transportation. And then lastly, we looked at bus routes and amenities. So because I think we can all fit these in everybody's view, let's talk about this whole table at once. So K1 all the way through L4. Give everyone a moment to read through it. Hal?
Yeah, in terms of the working goal, I would maybe add a couple of words to it, say foster transportation options that support the diverse and growing needs of the community, because people in the community are a wide range of ages and situations. So there's some diversity there, and that's going to continue as the community grows. So I think you just start to recognize the diverse transportation needs here. And then I also was wondering about working policy L, reduce commute times through alternative modes of transportation. I don't know that you're going to actually be able to reduce commute times through alternative modes, at least the modes I'm aware of. At least I don't, in the foreseeable future, I don't see anything like high-speed rail in Oro Valley. So that's probably the only thing that could really speed things up from getting from point A to B. So I don't know that that is something that's feasible.
Okay. And I will let everybody know, so in our economic development group, this came up as well in terms of transportation and reducing commute times. And so one action they added or they included is even exploring and working with or exploring options with businesses like Raytheon to see if they can have satellite offices in Oro Valley, which would reduce the commute time for those folks. But I hear you, Hal, that unless you're, going really fast, you're not actually reducing the time. So we can work on the language for that one.
Okay.
Malini?
Yes.
If I could offer two is we don't know what technology is going to bring us. I was part of a governor's task force looking at UAVs, which was, essentially aerial taxi service. And the technology is coming, particularly with the proliferation of electric vehicle technology, that's translating to aerial as well. And since we are talking a 10-year plan and the speed at which these innovations are coming, there may be opportunity, and I think this helps open the door. And again, I appreciate this group's comment. I think this opens the door for embracing other modes and a goal of decreasing time. Yes, I agree with Hal 100%. The way our road system's set up, and as we are a suburban community, there's nothing with the current technology that's going to change the speed in which you get from point A to point B. Not really, in all realistic fashion. However, there might be new technology in the near future that may indeed do that. But with everything, keep in mind, there's always a double-edged sword. One of the things I brought up when I was at the governor's task force meetings was, well, what about privacy? We look at a 2D world with regard to buffering and things like that. Are we now going to look at a 3D world when it comes to buffering, or do we create air routes? You know, what's the drawback of these things? So I think having you know, something in a 10-year plan here that opens the door and the ability for the town to spend time and resources, particularly staff time and resources, to make sure the community is protected, to provide the advantages, but also protect from whatever disadvantage something could come if it's not controlled well.
Sure. And yeah, I do want to mention, and Buyer put a comment in the chat, is there is definitely crossover with when we're talking about reducing commute times with our economic development group. So I do see L being expanded a little bit, just so that it's comprehensive of both groups' conversations. So we'll definitely work on those. Randy?
Yes, L4,
Mhm.
again, just being a stickler for specificity. Could we change that to enhance rider experience by providing, and then referring back to the amenities section, benches and shade shelters for the transit stops? I mean, I'm
Yep.
not sure we want to put restrooms on all of them, or what other amenities we want to add. So just being a little more specific.
Yep, and we could definitely, like, as you noted, on other ones, we gave examples, so it meets the intent. Yep. And I see some folks are reading still, so I'll give everyone a moment. Any other comments, questions about public transportation, the actions, policies, and goals? Sure.
Just a quick question. Can we possibly get any information regarding the bus ridership? Who's actually riding it from up here in Ora Valley, and how old are they, and those kind of things, so that we have a better idea of why we need to potentially get more bus service downtown or wherever it is that they're traveling to?
We do track that. So on our dial-a-ride, we track that very closely. The reason that you don't see bus service up here is because there wasn't that ridership. And SunTran will provide that ridership if the town's willing to pay for it, or will provide that service for routes, for fixed routes, if the town's willing to pay for it, when they can't make a go of it because of the lack of ridership.
Okay, that's good information. So, yeah, so I don't know if that has anything to do with, I guess we're not really saying that we want to. Well, it
Right.
says to identify corridors for commuter bus routes. So if we know we're going to have to pay for it, it would maybe identify, maybe explore would be a better word.
Yeah, we could do explore and identify, or so with L2, yeah, we tried to keep it broad, that we're not specifying that we need bus routes, but maybe we do need the word need in there or something similar. Again, thinking this is for the next 10 years, so things could
Right.
change. So
Evaluation and constantly revisiting the subject is always a good thing.
yeah, so I'm hearing the words evaluate, explore.
Evaluate. Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Paul.
Good. Yep, thank you. And then, yeah, buyer put also in the chat, maybe cost benefit in that wording too. Okay, seeing no more hands, it looks like everybody's also done reading. Everybody except these is headed in the right direction. Some great discussion though for some adds and changes. Okay. So now I do want to check in with the draft guiding principle. So this is it was drafted based on what we heard last year through the survey, but also through events and online comments. And we did what we called the Wordsmith Challenge, where folks also had an opportunity to go in and give specific word choice changes. So this is where it's at now, but I do want to check in with you all to make sure, do you think it accurately reflects what folks said on the screen, but also the additional guidance you provided through all the meetings, including this one. And the guiding principle is what's shown in the orange boxes along the right-hand side of the screen. So I'm going to kind of scoot us over, give everybody a moment to read it, and let me know what your comments or thoughts are on this. And just as a reminder, the guiding principle is meant to be high level in a sense. So where the goals, policies, and actions get more into the details. Jody, I think you are.
I was just looking at the second to the last one, increase public transportation options. Well, as Cheryl mentioned and Paul kind of chimed in, is do we need to increase public transportation options? And I think that's the biggest question is that really a guiding principle? And should it say increase or should it say something else?
That's a fair point. Yep. Maybe instead of increase, it does need a different word there for the discussion. And then Randy?
Maybe the word optimize would be a good one as opposed to increase, but trying to find what's appropriate for our situation.
Yep. Thank you. Good suggestion. And then Sue?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the word optimize, because if we need less, that would be optimizing it. But increasing, I think we don't know for sure that we'll need that. So I agree with the word optimize. I think it's more appropriate.
Okay. And then Kim?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so 48% of the respondents to the survey to the question prioritized increasing public transportation options. So I think the draft guiding principle should be responsive to that, whether it's explore or other words that we've been using tonight. The explore availability or exploring the increase of options for public transportation. I think that might be the right word, but we can customize it to a certain extent.
Okay. Yep. And then who's on the iPhone?
Oh, sorry, that's Mike. This is not on the public transportation one. I guess the one thing I guess I'm struggling a little bit. We spent a lot of time talking about pedestrian and bicyclist, and while the last principle talks about all users, I guess I was looking for something to be more specific to call out, improving the bike, specifically multi-use paths or, or whatever the right wording is. But I think we just lost that. We talked very specifically about roads, signalized intersections, vehicle miles, but we just have a generic all users thing. So I think I would suggest that we have to somehow strengthen that to specifically talk about, improving our bicycle, improving the loop, improving pedestrian connectivity through multi-use paths or something along those lines.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. It looks like Gail, then Andrew, then Sue.
I wanted to add a little bit to what Kim had said about 48% prioritize increased public transportation options. I just kind of want to caution the group that I think some of the questions in our survey were misleading. And we may have not necessarily got the best information back. Like, for example, they're concerned about affordable housing. But when asked, if you asked a follow-up question, like, how would you propose we subsidize it? Are you willing to pitch in? All of a sudden, my guess is their concern about public housing costs would probably go down. So to your point, Kim, I think kind of nuancing the position to optimize to see what's necessary, I think could be important because, again, I think some of the questions from this, having a background in market research, I think some of these questions weren't necessarily worded appropriately. They were kind of worded in a leading direction.
So just for context for this question, we just asked folks to rate on a 1 through 5 how they would prioritize increasing public transportation. But we also heard at events and online similar statements about public transportation. So the survey wasn't the only way for folks to talk about this. And I, again, do want to remind folks that when you see these numbers, they do represent a significant amount of Oro Valley adults. So I think maybe a way to make sure we're honoring residents from last year, but also, and that is our charge is to honor what we heard over the last year, but also to all of your points, making sure it includes the additional guidance we've gotten out of these meetings is, as Kim probably has proposed, is keep the word increase, but maybe adding other words to give it that additional context.
That sounds perfect.
Does that work for everyone? Okay. Then Andrew, and then
What about the word evaluate public transportation options?
yeah, we can look at definitely the other types of
This rate includes air, electric, and everything.
okay, we can add that as an option. But I think I heard from everybody we're good with keeping increase, but adding some more language to help capture what we talked about as well.
Just the scope be more encompassing, I guess, to make sure we don't miss anything.
Sure. Okay, other comments on the guiding principle? Cheryl?
One last comment on the one we just discussed was that I remember when we were doing the Main Streets program, people thought it would be a great idea to have a trolley running through town. I think that's out of our budget. So we don't know, I suppose, whether they were thinking of that in their mind. And then my other comment is on the one just above that, reduce vehicle miles traveled between housing, shopping, and employment areas. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do that because it appears that we don't really need more commercial. So most likely we'll have people coming to have the properties rezoned for housing. So then we're short some shopping areas. And I'm just struggling with trying to understand how we're capable of doing that. I mean, they have development rates.
Yeah, so some of that part of discussion will, to your point, come up during the land use meetings as well. I know we have it under transportation, but you're right, it's more of a land use and looking at, and I know in the housing conversation as well as even in the economic development conversation, there are goals and policies related to mixed use developments. And that's one way to reduce, for those folks who are living, like for the marketplace, for instance, anybody who's moving into those apartments, right? They'll be really close to their shopping and possibly even employment areas, depending on where they live. So it would be more with land use.
And just to add to Cheryl's comment, we actually did have a trolley for a few months. It was an experiment. We created a circulator route with one of our buses, and it was empty all the time. So that went away pretty quickly.
Sue?
Yeah, I just want to though highlight to be careful. I know that that many people did want to increase public transportation options, but I do think we need to be careful because you know, we will need to fund them, and so I just think that word increase instead of, I like the word explore or optimize. I just think that we need to be really careful about that increase word, because if we don't have the funds for it, we just have to be careful because we're kind of built out at this point, and it seems like things are running really well here. And even in the future, I think they're going to run very well, but we have to be careful about saying increasing things if we might not have the funding. So that's why I'm really leery of that word increase. We just have to be careful about promising things. You know, promising if we can make it, but we just have to be careful of our wording. Okay, thank you.
Sure, and to your you know, you're right, and to your point, funding is at the basis for a lot of these, right? So in the next 10 years, we'll have to see what is feasible and where we do have the opportunities there. Okay, Mr. Kiesler?
I would say I'm in support of this language, but I hear the group here with the caution, and I share the same caution because I'm the guy that has to make it all add up at the end, and maybe add the terminology based on available funding.
Yeah, and again, I think that would be for a lot of these, respectfully, you know, even increase efficiency at signalized intersections, that could have a cost if you have to replace lights. So I would just be wary of that because we would be then adding it to a lot of the principles. But that doesn't mean there isn't a way to word it to still make sure that there's a cost benefit or something else related to that. Randy?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I think maybe even adding a separate guiding principle that talks about, you know, the funding issue, because it really can impact all these.
Yep.
So rather than add it to, you know, 6 or 7 different items, maybe just create a separate one.
Yeah, so there is a guiding principle on town finances, and we're getting to the fun part of these meetings where there's a lot of overlap. So I do want to let all of you know that at the end of this in May, we will be sending out all the goals, policies, and actions out to folks. You can also on OV Path Forward, sorry, my light went off. On OV Path Forward, you can see also what other groups are working on in terms of their draft goals and the guiding principles. But I do hear you, Randy, and we'll make sure there is one to capture that because funding is very important to all of this effort. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so what I heard was this heading in the that we will look at that bullet point about public transportation, leaving the word increase again to make sure we're honoring what residents said before, but also adding some more context to make sure that it also respects what we talked about in these groups, and then also making sure adding a principle or something more specific to pedestrian and cyclists, as that was an important part of this group's discussion. All right, so let me stop sharing the whiteboard. Yeah, again, I want to thank all of you for joining the meeting tonight. What I gathered from tonight's discussion is that overall, the first draft of the transportation goals, policies, and actions are headed in the right direction. Can I get one more head nod or thumbs up if that isn't a fair assumption? Okay. Before I have you guys go, I do want to just let you know about the April meeting. So in April, we will get into growth and development. That does include the land use map. So one moment, I'm going to share the schedule because there have been a couple schedule changes. And I want to make sure you guys are, whoops. Oh, sorry. Let me try that one more time. All right. So we already had planned to have a meeting on April 3rd. However, that meeting will now be online. And the reason it will be online is we'll be doing kind of our same whiteboard exercise in terms of a discussion. We'd like to get a little bit more guidance from everyone about how we're even going to approach the land use map before we get into it. So you'll still have a meeting next Thursday, April 3rd. I will be getting an email out by the end of this week with the discussion questions, your RSVP, so your homework and RSVP for that meeting. Now, the land use map meetings, they do need to be in person, as you can imagine. A whiteboard with a map on it wouldn't be enjoyable for anyone. So those ones are now scheduled. There'll be 2 in 1 week. The first one will be Monday, April 14th, and the second one will be Thursday, April 17th. Both of those will be held at Town Hall and Council Chambers. Again, I will send out an email with more information for those as well. And then our last meeting we are planning regarding development would be online on Tuesday, April 29th. And that's where we'll kind of wrap up the conversation with regards to looking at the goals, policies, and actions, as well as the land use map changes.
Melanie, are you recommending that we attend both in-person meetings or one or the other?
I recommend to attend both. So in one meeting, we will be focusing more on annexation, growth areas, things of that nature. And then in another meeting, we'll focus on possible land use map changes. So there is enough with the land use map, but that both meetings will be different. And when I send out reminders for those ones, I will be more specific of what exactly we're talking about in each meeting. So hopefully you can attend both, but you can also plan accordingly. Okay. Any questions about where we're headed in April? All right, well, I have heard, again, I thank you all for coming tonight. I have heard there's a really important basketball game on tonight. Clearly, I'm not into March Madness. So I'll give you guys will give you about 10 minutes to hopefully catch up on whatever happened. So have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, everybody.